You're listening to the Drummer Daily Podcast, the only daily podcast dedicated just to drummers. Go to my website at danielhadaway.com. Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well today, whenever you are, wherever you are out there in the world. I'm doing well. Before I get started, someone commented the other day, it's like, why do you always sound out of breath when you do these podcasts? And the truth is because I always come upstairs to do these podcasts because I have a 4-year-old downstairs in my life, and he's downstairs and he's very noisy. And so I don't spend a lot of time trying to make these things sound perfect, but at least I could do for you is come to a somewhat quiet place when I record this. So the first reason is because I just came up the stairs most of the time when I do these. That's the case today, and I'm apparently very out of shape. And the second is that I normally walk around while I'm recording this podcast. For some reason, I pace when I talk on this podcast. So in case you didn't know and you were curious, no, I'm not running a marathon right now. I just am out of shape and walked up a flight of stairs. So there you go. So today I'm going to start a 3-part series over the next 3 days. And so one of my last podcasts, I had 3 tips and I put them all into one podcast, and I realized that I rushed through all of them and I couldn't talk about them as much. So I thought, hey, why don't I split this up into 3 different podcasts this time instead of trying to squeeze everything in really quick and it just flies right by. So I'm going to talk the next 3 days, starting today, about 3 ways to have more fun practicing drums. That's something that I realized that for me, even as a kid, I was lazy when it came to playing drums, and that in most everything in life, if I wasn't having fun doing it, it was really hard for me to do. And maybe that's not lazy. I don't know what the word is for that, but whatever it was, that was me. And so, the reason why I think I was able to get pretty good at the drums and continue practicing for year after year after year was that I pretty quickly found a way for it to be fun for me. And I realize I've been on some like drum forums and stuff, and I've heard from some people through the years talking about practicing, and I realized that their experience practicing drums is very different than my experience practicing drums. Their practice is not like my experience practicing drums. So I thought I would share kind of a few things that I do in practice to make it fun, and that's what I'm going to do now. So the first thing I'm going to share with you today is all about making sure your drums sound good. For me, I've noticed that for whatever reason, whenever my drums sound really bad, it's really hard for me to play well. And this is like a lot of times if I go into a gig and there's a backline kit, there's some, it's not mine, or, even growing up, you play in churches and stuff, and they'd always take care of their stuff. And so it's really hard to, for me at least, it's really hard to play well. And really, maybe that's not completely true. So it wasn't always hard for me to play on a bad sounding kit. It wasn't any harder for me, I don't think, than anybody else. But what I noticed is that whenever I'd go to a place and the drums sounded really good, or like I'd play in like a big show and they'd have like the big giant subwoofer behind me, and I could feel the kick drum, and had my in-ear monitors in, and I could hear the drums mixed, through the mics. I played so much better. And I was like, well, and then I'd go to the next show and it'd be some, crappy PA or whatever, and I wouldn't have anything, and I'd go back to playing my normal way. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. It's like when I understand how good my drums sound, I start playing better. So for us practicing at home, what that means, my drum setup, let me just tell you what I do at home to practice. And I'm not saying you need to go buy a bunch of gear, but what I will say is this: the next time you think about going and buying a piece of drum gear, think long and hard about whether you really want that piece of drum gear. Maybe you want something that will get you closer to what I'm talking about today. So here's my drum setup at home when I practice. I have... First off, I mic every drum, like I close mic every drum. I have right now I use a Behringer X-Air mixer, so it's like 16 channels, but even a little Mackie mixer would do well. I mic everything in. You can get a decent little 4-channel mixer even for $75 I think probably. But I run every mic into that mixer. I do the best I can to mix those and get them sounding good to me. And then instead of just listening through headphones, I have in-ear monitors or some kind of headphones that block out almost all the sound coming in from the outside world. So the only way I'm hearing my drums is through those headphones. And then I'll get to more of my practicing setup in the next podcast. But for now, we're talking about making our drums sound good. And so what I've noticed is that even a terrible sounding drum set most of the time sounds a lot better through mics and getting a little bit of processing done, EQ, or just a little bit of compression if you can do that with your equipment or whatever. But and then the other thing that I have that really made a difference, like I mentioned before, I for some reason realized that I really enjoyed playing with a giant subwoofer behind me. So of course I can't, it's not practical in a suburban environment in a neighborhood to have a giant subwoofer blaring behind me with my kick drum pumping through it at home. So what I have is I think they still make them. It's by a company called Clark Synthesis, but it's called a tactile transducer. It's not the same as like those, like Pearl I think has like those things called it's called the butt thumper or the butt shaker or something like that, but it's not quite the same principle because that one has almost like the same kind of motor that's in a video game controller that makes it vibrate, or like a cell phone. It has one of those that vibrates at certain frequencies, like along with your kick drum. What I have is actually, it looks more like a flying saucer. It's 2 speakers glued together. And the cool thing about that is that the actual tone of your drums comes through that. The exact frequency that's coming out of that mic goes in, and it's attached to my seat, and it transduces, kind of vibrates through your bones, but it's hard to describe, but it feels a lot different than using those little butt shakers. It feels more like the giant speakers right behind you. That also makes a lot more enjoyable to play along with music, which is another part of what I'm going to get to in one of these upcoming episodes in this 3-part series. But what I want to encourage you to do is even if you don't have mics, if you don't have any other pieces of gear, if it's hard for you to practice, I want you to spend some time today or tomorrow before you practice next time, tuning your drums. And you can go back, I have an episode that's all about tuning your snare drum. That's a good place to start. But go back and work on your drums a little bit and try to get them sounding better. It's not just because you don't have motivation that it's hard to practice. I think if you could hear your drums, sounding better, you might actually practice a little more. At least I know that I do. But everybody's different. But I just want to encourage you, work on making your drums sound better as a first step to maybe enjoying practice a little more. And we all know that the things that we enjoy, we tend to want to do more. And that's really the end goal of this, is that if you enjoy practice, you'll actually practice more. And that's never a bad thing when it comes to playing drums. So until tomorrow, hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.